Saludos from your DMO, Discover Puerto Rico. We appreciate you investing your time to join us today as we work together to revive and rebuild our tourism industry. And by all accounts, it's clear the great recovery of travel and tourism is underway in Puerto Rico. And what an impressive recovery we've seen of late. Occupancy rates rising, average daily rates rising, deplanements at our airport growing, and visitor counts both inside and outside the metropolitan area reaching record levels. It's very encouraging to see these positive trends. So before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you. Despite many challenges, including an unprecedented labor shortage, the business community in Puerto Rico is once again showing the world its strength and resiliency, and we applaud all you are doing to enable this recovery to take place. As for your team at your DMO, we are excited about the progress we are making in all facets of our marketing, sales, and promotional efforts. As you'll see in today's presentations, we are achieving a high rate of return on our investments, and the impact of our advertisements is not only helping attract record numbers of visitors, it's also leading to higher spends and dispersion of visitors throughout our island. As you know, these are two key measurements that we employ to gauge our progress. And as you'll hear from our marketing team today, we have a number of innovative marketing initiatives planned which align with the same brand strategy we have consistently developed and deployed over the past 3 years. We're also seeing tremendous results from our meeting and convention sales efforts and our leisure sales efforts. Meeting convention leads have outpaced 2019 levels for 8 of the last 10 weeks, and planners are not just looking at our island, they're booking our island. Our sales and services team have been relentless in their pursuit of new business as they continue to turn up new opportunities daily to gain market share despite the challenges we face. Likewise, the trend of positive growth in travel advisor and travel consortia sales is clear and undeniable, demonstrating the improved strategies we've employed and the efforts to train a record number of travel advisors through our Puerto Rico Travel Expert Program are working. Beyond the numbers, we are excited to see the on-island activities we lead resume the pace achieved prior to the pandemic. We're once again hosting site visits and fam trips on island with highly qualified planners and key industry and trade leaders, all of which is helping position Puerto Rico as a premier meeting destination in the minds of planners who are deciding where to take their groups as we emerge from the pandemic. Our communications team is once again hosting on-island fam trips for travel, trade, media, and influencers, and this is helping us get out in front of our competition by generating millions of dollars of positive publicity for our island at a time when many travelers are deciding where to take their next trip. Each of these milestones, along with many other performance measures you'll hear about today, are made possible by the strategies and tactics we consistently employ. But this only works because we continue to rely upon sound research and insightful analytics. I think back to when we opened Discover Puerto Rico 3 years ago, and I remember in meeting after meeting, you and other industry partners repeatedly telling us how important it was to you for your DMO to invest in research, data, and analytics to guide and inform our decision-making. We heard you loud and clear, and we agree. And that's why we have made research and analysis a top priority in all that we do. In my view, any destination marketing organization that invests in marketing and sales without first investing in the necessary research and analytics is simply hoping to be lucky. You deserve better than that. So at Discover Puerto Rico, we continue to be an organization led by research and informed by data and analysis. When you consider the research we began with 3 years ago, an incomplete visitor analysis, an assessment of meeting planner perception, and 1 year's worth of STR occupancy reports, and then look at the massive volume of research and analytics we now produce on a regular basis, most of which is readily available to you and your team, it's amazing to see how far we've come. Much of the credit for this goes to our Director of Research and Analytics, Alicia Valentine, who left a very prestigious position with one of the industry leaders in destination marketing research and analysis to join our team and help our island. And Alicia regularly collaborates with several of the top researchers and analysts in our industry, including one who joins us today. Adam Sachs is the preeminent tourism economist and one of the brightest minds in our industry. Adam's ability to dissect the numbers and provide meaningful, actionable analysis is unparalleled. To borrow from the old E.F. Hutton TV commercials, when Adam Sachs talks, people listen. And at Discover Puerto Rico, we don't just listen to savvy researchers like Alicia and Adam, we take action based on their insights. This helps improve our research and our results and provides you with the confidence and assurance that Discover Puerto Rico is well prepared to seize every opportunity to grow our industry and deliver great results for you and your team. Now, while we're very encouraged with the progress that's taking place, there is one particular issue we see which could put the brakes on our progress. And this one does not require much research or analysis. As we look to the future, it appears that the booking pace, which is hot right now, is going to cool down in the coming months. When the federal unemployment subsidies disappear and people who are unemployed today must go back to work, the number of people with time and money to travel will normalize. We also know that sooner or later, the travel restrictions impacting US travelers visiting other Caribbean islands will eventually be relaxed. In summary, it's going to get a lot more competitive. Already, we are hearing of US states and destinations that are boosting their investments in tourism marketing and in some instances, planning their biggest advertising campaigns ever to ensure their recovery continues to move along at a good pace. I wish I could tell you that we are positioned to do the same, but unfortunately, that's not yet the case. We have the plans, but we lack the resources. Currently, much of the positive impact we are having is due to one-time federal funds, which will soon be depleted. So, just when the population of travelers begins to shrink and other destinations ramp up their spending, we could see a decline in our promotional investments by as much as 70%. And I'm certain I don't have to explain to you what could happen if we reduce our marketing efforts at a time when competition is growing and travel is leveling off. The solution to this challenge is very simple. Allocate a small percentage of the American Rescue Plan funds, which the federal government has made available. In an historic move that I don't recall ever happening in the past, the United States Congress has established our industry as a priority in this massive financial stimulus. But it's ultimately up to local government leaders on how to invest those funds. Puerto Rico, of course, has many needs, but an investment in the industry that sustains 86,000 jobs and generates over $760 million in tax revenues is timely, necessary, and very important. We all know that an investment in tourism is an investment in Puerto Rico's future. And you can be certain that if we receive federal funds, we are prepared to act swiftly and wisely to continue delivering great results as we work together to advance the great recovery of travel and tourism here in Puerto Rico. It's now my pleasure to turn the presentation over to our Director of Research and Analytics, Alicia Valentine.
Thank you, Brad, and good morning, everyone. Since we have a research-heavy guest today, I'm going to keep it pretty brief, but I wanted to give an update on what we've seen in the past month, as well as some new pieces of data related to the impact of the marketing that Discover Puerto Rico has been able to place this year. When I reviewed this hotel demand chart a month ago, we were starting to see significant gains over 2019 in May. This is hotel demand, so room nights sold over the last 3 years, with 2021 as the blue bar, 2019 as the yellow line, and 2020 as the green line. We have now had 8 straight weeks of more room nights sold than 2 years ago. That's nearly 100,000 additional hotel room nights in the last 2 months. And translating this to occupancy, that's about 15% increase than over May and June of 2019. And we're seeing these kinds of increases when the rest of the US continues to run about 7.5% below where they were 2 years ago. And while the demand is certainly encouraging, what matters is the revenue and the taxes it brings to Puerto Rico. And we're not seeing surges in demand because of low prices. The average room rate for the last 8 weeks was $251. This is 37% higher than 2 years ago. Again, this is not something other destinations are seeing. Across the US, rates are down about 0.5% from 2 years ago. And with this, the Puerto Rico Tourism Company is reporting record lodging taxes. March, April, and May The taxes were 53% higher than 2 years ago, a complete turnaround from the beginning of the year when tax collections were down over 40%. And while the final monthly figures for June aren't yet available, when we're looking at the weekly revenues, I anticipate tax collections will be about 70% higher than 2019. And we know that Discover Puerto Rico's paid media is contributing to this increase in revenue and taxes through both additional visits, higher rates, and longer stays. We've discussed the tracking technology that our partners at Adara provides in the past. They are able to monitor when consumers are exposed to Discover Puerto Rico's marketing and then track online search and purchase behavior. And through this tracking, we know that exposed consumers paid an average daily rate of $307. So that's 34% higher than the average that I mentioned earlier, and they stayed an average of 6.4 nights. So Arrivalist, our other data partner that uses the most advanced tracking technology, monitors when consumers arrive on the island and how they then proceed to travel around the island, and also allows us to understand the length of stay. And so we know that the average length of stay by these exposed consumers is 12% longer than other visitors. So this data from Adara is just a snapshot that shows us a bit of the demographic breakdown of exposed bookings throughout the year, with 50% as couples, 8% as singles, and 40% as families who stay the longest and paid the highest rates. Before placing media with significant federal funding, Discover Puerto Rico turned to our partners at Destination Analysts to establish a baseline against which our investment could be measured later in the year. And in these interviews with over 3,600 consumers in our target markets, we were able to understand where Puerto Rico stood in terms of recall of our media, as well as a competitive position. So encouraging is that nearly 2/3 of consumers in the target markets recalled hearing about travel to Puerto Rico in the next 6 months, really a testament to the efforts of the media relations teams, keeping Puerto Rico top of mind when many destinations really pivoted to talk to a local audience. And we know it's a very competitive marketplace. When asked an open-ended question about destinations they most want to visit on their next vacation, we see many of the usual suspects. And so the good news is that many of those often mentioned, you'll see Florida, Hawaii, and California, are all destinations with beach product we know consumers say they wanted throughout the pandemic. But when offered a narrower competitive set, nearly 40% of consumers in these target markets anticipate visiting Puerto Rico in the next 2 years. This uses both a different scale and different timeline from other primary research we've conducted, but our most recent brand health study had found that just 22% had anticipated visiting in the next year. So a pretty significant increase over that last measurement. And this study is considered the baseline for those federal funds. We'll be evaluating the performance of the media at the end of those campaigns. But it's encouraging that the media Discover Puerto Rico has been able to place in recent months is resonating with consumers. That same survey showed that 78% said the advertisements made Puerto Rico seem like a place they'd want to visit, and more than 70% said they made Puerto Rico look like a safe place to visit. Now, this might not seem like an important decision maker for consumers, but consistently, consumers say that feeling safe is the most important attribute in destination selection. And in this research, I feel safe there is the attribute where the largest gaps existed between what consumers deem important and how well they think it describes Puerto Rico. So for the advertising to be able to make consumers feel safe contributes significantly to the perception of Puerto Rico as a viable travel destination. So with this, where more than half of consumers interviewed indicated that after seeing the ads, they were more likely to visit Puerto Rico in the next 18 months, we anticipate some strong results at the end of these campaigns. But that advertising has the ability to generate continued interest for such a long time frame is certainly encouraging. While we've been able to see that unprecedented demand in recent months, that's expected to continue at least throughout the summer. This future booking data is showing significant declines starting in October. Our partners at TravelClick provide future hotel booking pace. So this is the difference between where we are currently booking against where we were booking at the same time 2 years ago. Here through September, we anticipate 50+% increases in revenue against 2019. But we know that Puerto Rico has enjoyed a very unique position coming out of the pandemic, certainly as a convenient destination and both having the kind of product that consumers were craving. But as Brad mentioned, as benefits run out and consumers get back to work, we're seeing a steep decline in the booking pace starting in the fourth quarter. And in January, we're actually booking lower than we were at the same time 2 years ago. So this continued investment in paid media is certainly necessary to keep Puerto Rico as a viable destination as the world begins to reopen. And you may have noticed that many of those destinations in the word cloud from destination analysts were international. And so not only Europe in general, but specifically England, Italy, Spain, Canada, and the UAE were generating more top of mind interest than Puerto Rico. And if this year has taught us nothing, it's that global issues have the ability to impact us at a very local level, certainly even keeping us in our homes for months. So the return of travel is a global issue. And I'm pleased to have with us today one of the global leaders in understanding how economic pieces fit together to impact the industry. Adam Sachs of Tourism Economics has been our partner from the beginning in establishing our metrics in terms of how Discover Puerto Rico evaluates our economic impact. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Adam Sachs, the president of Tourism Economics.
Thank you, Alicia. That was excellent, very, very encouraging. I'm going to share with you some thoughts about the future, the recovery, and how we're seeing the travel landscape over the next year or two, both nationally and globally, but then specifically for Puerto Rico. I'm going to share with you some forecasts as well that we've prepared with Discover Puerto Rico. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to talk about 4 characteristics of the travel recovery. The first characteristic is that we are living right now in what we would call our best case scenario compared to what we saw 6 or 7 months ago. And what I mean by that is that as a function of vaccinations, where we expect to get to about 70% of adults having been vaccinated in the US before the end of the summer, that is a remarkable amount of progress in a relatively short period of time. And it's really, if you go back to where we were, let's say around Christmas of last year, and what we thought might be possible, this would be our best case scenario. This would be a scenario that we would gladly sign on the bottom line to say, yes, we'll take 70% vaccinated, and we're gonna experience high levels of effectiveness in these vaccines. In fact, that's exactly what has happened. We have experienced in the US a reduction in hospitalizations and deaths of more than 90% over the last 7 months. And this is a phenomenal turnaround. And one of the reasons that you've seen the strong performance that you have seen for the tourism industry in Puerto Rico. And Destination Analyst is confirming this, that 81% of travelers say that they're ready to travel right now as of the middle of June. And look where we were back in December, where only 50% of travelers said they were ready to travel. So the entire market has changed dramatically in a relatively short period of time. And it's why you've seen the data that Alicia just shared with you. Alicia's data was more detailed, but this is just monthly data on hotel room nights and short-term rental room nights. And I think that the main story here is that, yes, the year started out slowly, where hotel room demand, room nights booked, was below 2019 levels in January. But then in each month, it began to catch up. And in April, was ahead of 2019 levels. And then as Alicia showed you in May and then in June, hotel room demand began to surpass hotel room demand in 2019. Well, short-term rentals, Airbnb and other platforms, well, that performance has been remarkable, where through April, short-term rental room nights are up 40% relative to 2019 levels. And so the strength that we saw in April has continued through May and through June. And so if you look at the pace for short-term rental performance in particular, we see in just the first 4 months of the year, a significant number of hotel room night or short-term rental room nights compared to even 2020, 2019, a 40% increase. So we are living in something of a best case scenario right now. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means that if we could have envisioned something 6 months ago, we are experiencing what we would have hoped for at that time. The second characteristic is that the economy is in a strong position to fuel a rebound. Employment within the U.S. has recovered all but 6.8 million jobs through the end of June. But keep in mind, there were 22 million jobs lost in the spring of 2020. So there's been a significant recovery in the labor market in a relatively short period of time. The unemployment rate in the U.S. is 5.9%. So that is quite a rapid turnaround. Now, we still have a ways to go, right? 6.8 million jobs remain lost. But we think there is strong momentum for the jobs market. And it is clear when we look at job openings. There are 9 million job openings in the U.S. right now. And so that means that the labor market will continue to add jobs and wages will continue to rise in the U.S. In fact, the relationship between the number of people looking for jobs and the number of job openings is nearly 1-to-1 right now. And so now there are mismatches between the types of jobs that are available and the locations of those jobs and where people are, but you can see that there is significant forward momentum on the jobs market because there's so many job openings. What this leads us to is a summer boom for economic activity that we are experiencing right now. So there was a spring bloom, things began to improve in the U.S. economy. They are accelerating rapidly because of that improved health environment and because of the massive fiscal stimulus that amounted to 25% of U.S. GDP. We're seeing the U.S. economy accelerate right now. And our expectations at Oxford Economics, who is our sister company, is that U.S. GDP will expand 7.7% 2021. That's the fastest economic growth since 1951 in the post-World War II rebuild period. The third characteristic of the travel recovery is that travelers are more than ready to get back to traveling. One of the reasons is that stimulus checks remain available for spending. Only 25% of stimulus checks in the most recent 2 rounds have actually been spent. The remainder have been either saved. You can see 42% of stimulus checks that were issued in March were saved. 34% used to pay down debt. And so households have strong balance sheets, and that is money that is available for travel. The savings rate in the U.S. is still in the range of 15%. That is much higher than it's been over the last 20 years and has resulted in savings, additional savings of $2.5 trillion for U.S. consumers. That is money that is available for travel in the coming year. And data from Longwoods indicates that travel is top of mind for U.S. households. 88% of travelers say they already have travel plans in the next 6 months, and there are going to be more travel plans made. And so travelers are ready, they're making plans, and their balance sheets, their wallets are in a strong position to support that travel spending. Now, we're going to talk about forecasts now, and I do want to mention that predictions do not always age well. Here is one that comes to mind. This was a prediction about a prospect for the NBA. And the scouts, when they reviewed his college career, they said he's far below NBA standard in explosiveness and athleticism. He's not a natural point guard that an NBA team can rely on to run a team. He will have to adjust to not being a volume shooter. He's not a great finisher around the basket due to his size and physical attributes. So this was the prediction about this potential NBA player. Who was it? It was none other than Steph Curry. And this is a prediction that we can say definitely did not age well, because Steph Curry already has become a 3-time NBA champion, 2-time MVP, 7-time All-Star, 2-time scoring leader, and the only unanimous MVP selection in league history. So why am I sharing with you this rather unfortunate prediction? It's because we're living in a time when other unfortunate predictions have been made. And here's another one. This one was made toward the end of last year. Bill Gates says that more than 50% of business travel will disappear in a post-coronavirus world. And I would say that right now, we can already take this prediction and put it in the exact same place that we put Steph Curry's pre-draft scouting report prediction in. And the reason is that we're seeing data from GBTA, the Global Business Travel Association, showing that 73% of companies already are traveling or plan to travel within the next 3 months. And so we're already well on our way. And what it reveals is that travel is not a dispensable activity for businesses. It's essential for business activity. It's essential for competitiveness. It's essential for businesses to continue to invest in their employees and in their businesses. And so when you look at the convention and the meetings market for Puerto Rico, I think that the outlook is strong because of some of your competitive advantages and because the need for meetings continues. And one of the reasons that I think we can be encouraged about the meetings industry is that vaccine hesitancy among those that are highly educated is very, very low. In fact, if you have a bachelor's degree, a college degree, vaccine hesitancy in the US is only 5%. So meetings and business meetings, which are primarily college educated attendees, are going to be very safe. And it's why, while I have attended multiple conventions and conferences and meetings over the last few months, there have been no cases of viral outbreaks. And it's because the vast majority of people at these meetings are vaccinated. And so there's confidence and continued safety that is encouraging meetings moving forward. And then my last characteristic for you is that clearly, when you look at the history of Puerto Rico and this latest chapter as well, Puerto Rico has a PhD in recovery. I work with destinations around the world. I work with maybe 200 in a given year. And there's no destination that has had to overcome more challenges over the last 6-7 years than Puerto Rico has. And with each one, we've seen Puerto Rico just rebound and innovate in ways to accelerate its recovery. And so I think if there were degrees, university degrees offered in recovery, Puerto Rico would certainly have earned its PhD in recovery. I mean, let's look at the history from 2013 to 2020. We can see 2017 and 2018 downturn, of course, but then 2019, just an incredible recovery with Discover Puerto Rico, really coming into its strengths in sales and marketing. But then 2020 happened, and it was a 41% drop in total visits, including both domestic and inbound overnight visitors. So what do we do now? We were asked by Discover Puerto Rico to develop 3 scenarios for recovery. The first is a baseline. This is what we think is most likely, based on a continued recovery trajectory, based on the current pace, and no reversal in travel restrictions. But then we realized there's uncertainty. And so we also developed a downside scenario where the pace of recovery slows. Travel restrictions are partially imposed as the Delta variant becomes more and more of a challenge in this scenario. And then there's also an upside scenario, which is that the pace of recovery continues and even accelerates. And there's some data that supports this idea as we look at the pace of future bookings, that things could actually strengthen in the coming months. This assumes in this upside scenario that the health environment continues to improve. So these are the three scenarios that we developed. Let me share with you what this looks like. In terms of total visitor volume, what I've done is I've indexed everything to 2019. So 2019 levels of visits is 100. You can see here's the 41% decline in 2020. So our baseline scenario for 2021 this year is that visits fully recover to 101% of 2019 levels, just about perfect recovery for 2021. And that is a reflection of weakness at the beginning of the year, a very strong recovery that we're seeing now in the summer months. The alternate scenarios, the downside, would be if things begin to slow, that we might still be 7% below, but still a significant recovery. But the upside is that things continue to strengthen, and you see 108% or an 8% lift over 2019 levels in 2021. And then expectations would be for continued growth in 2022. We do think that things will level off as far as the rate of growth as you move into next year for some of the reasons that I think both Brad and Alicia talked about. Puerto Rico has had some real competitive advantages over the last year, and the environment has produced pent-up demand as well that is being realized now in 2021. But we do expect continued growth in 2022 in all three scenarios. Now, it is important to note that one of the benefits that Puerto Rico has is a significant resident traveler market, and you can see that in 2020 the resident traveler market. So these would be residents of Puerto Rico traveling to different parts of the island, staying in hotels and short-term rentals, only fell some 31% in 2020, and has recovered a bit more. But the non-resident market is where we see incredible growth already in 2021. And in the baseline forecast, we expect non-resident visits to Puerto Rico to fully recover this year, and then continue growing another 3% in 2022. Right, resident visits represented in the data 35% of total in 2019, but 40% in 2020. So certainly helpful in the worst of the crisis in 2020, as resident visits were a bit more stable than non-residents. And one of the things that I think is very encouraging is we see how Puerto Rico was more resilient than the rest of the Caribbean in 2020. Looking at inbound, so non-resident international visitor arrivals, including U.S. mainland, to Puerto Rico, well, you can see strong growth in 2018 and 2019 exceeding that of the rest of the Caribbean. And then in 2020, international visits, overseas visits to Caribbean destinations outside of Puerto Rico fell nearly 70%. And so Puerto Rico was certainly more stable compared to the rest of the region, and is recovering much, much faster than the rest of the region as well. And in fact, here is the forecast that we produced for the rest of the Caribbean in terms of just non-resident visits. And you can see that the Caribbean, we expect to only be at 39% of 2019 levels this year, compared to Puerto Rico, which is expected to fully recover in the baseline forecast. And so again, Puerto Rico is demonstrating that it has a PhD in recovery as we compare it to its competitors in the region. And let me just end by noting that travelers do look to DMOs for their traveler plans, and we saw that in the ADARA data, the arrivalist data that Alicia and Brad mentioned. But here is data across 300 DMOs across the US. And what we see is that in the last few months, of 2021, activity on these websites has been the same or higher than 2019 levels over these last few months. So travelers are ready to travel, they're making travel plans, and they are using DMO content as the basis for making their plans and developing their dreams. And so very, very encouraging outlook, and happy to spend any extra time with you answering any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. Really important information, and as you said, a lot of encouraging information for our destination specifically. I would say to the participants, if you have any questions for Adam, anything you'd like to ask him, please be plugging that into the Q&A so we can address that at the end of the webinar. So as we presented several months ago, Discover Puerto Rico has developed a robust playbook to guide all of the strategies and tactics which will, and as you can see from what Adam shared, already are driving the island's tourism recovery. The document is available in English and Spanish on our industry portal, and we strongly recommend reviewing this when you have a chance, as it presents a really strong platform from which our partners and stakeholders can build their own recovery strategies upon. The plan is rooted in what we call a milestone method, which is a proprietary method. It monitors key milestones like entry requirements, CDC classification, and health and safety measures to drive our plans and all of the decisions made by the DMO. Additionally, building on our success in generating unprecedented economic impact for the island, we last week submitted the 2021-2022 Strategic Marketing Business Plan. This plan details the path forward to attain the island's strongest ever tourism results. Due to competitive sensitivity, we haven't published the document on our industry portal, but instead are making the document available by request. So simply email Janine Ortiz, whose email is noted here. And as I'm sure you've seen, we've begun messaging the newest executive order from Governor Pierluisi, which began July 5th. We revised all of our COVID-19 messaging that informs our website and travel advisory, consumer Q&A, and our MICE materials, and we're disseminating that information to US and international media. And we have, of course, been highlighting the famous Pina Colada in conjunction with National Pina Colada Day, which was July 10th. We're heavily featuring rum in the lead up to National Rum Month as well, which is next month, August. We partnered with various spirits and cocktail influencers to promote #HowIColada contest, where we've encouraged people to post their version of the Pina Colada for a chance to win a trip to Puerto Rico. We've been working with partners Caribe Hilton and Casa Bacardi to offer a 2-night, 3-day trip to a lucky winner. We've also coupled the contest, of course, with strong earned media, pairing existing web content as well. And so far, we've secured about 46 million impressions with top tier outlets like Fodor's Travel, VinePair, and many others. We recently hosted 3 members of the media who write for Expedia Group, USA Today 10 Best, and BuzzFeed. Their trip focused on the island's luxury offerings, including boating experiences, a champagne sabering ritual, and an El Yunque tour. And we've included a few of their social media posts from their time on the island. They'll be helping to communicate all of our amazing offerings while continuing to remind potential and future travelers of all of our health and safety measures. And we've hosted 3 members of the media who write for Reader's Digest, Food and Wine, and Thrillist recently, focusing on Puerto Rican cuisine. They experienced multiple municipalities, including Naranjito, Caguas, and San Juan. And here you just see a few of their social media posts as well from their time on the island. We also hosted 4 media recently to experience the Gilberto Santa Rosa concert, the first on the island since the beginning of the pandemic. During their trip, the media also experienced tours of the Puerto Rico Convention Center and Antigua Casino, meals at La Central by Mario Pagan, at Distrito T-Mobile, Taco Bar, and more, among many other activities. Here are just a few of their social posts, as well as images of the group while they were on the ground. And you'll also see listed here several upcoming FAMs that are including World Salsa Congress, National Rum Day, and Nautical Wonders FAM. You also see that we have a lot of upcoming moments that will continue to leverage, such as multi-generational travel, romantic getaways, and continued summer travel, and a kickoff to fall travel, among others. You'll note from a media standpoint, our media investments from CDBG-DR and CARES Act concluded on June 30th. While June metrics are still aggregating, we had the highest attributed hotel bookings tracked by Adara in the month of May, which Alicia mentioned. Arrival list lift is nearly 76% attributed to both campaigns, meaning that those who were exposed to our media are 76% more likely to arrive on the island. We'll share a full campaign recap on CDBG-DR at the end of the full campaign in our August MSAC and industry update meetings. And our site performance continues to be strong, following up on what Adam shared. Sessions and page views were up, while bounce rates continue to stay down month over month. And the real star of the data is looking at year-over-year performance with strong triple-digit growth in sessions, page views, and organic visits. Since the site launch, we've had over 715,000 referrals to tourism businesses and points of interest around the island. And during the month, there were 5 new content additions to the site, including a couple of new quizzes. So if you haven't checked out our really fun quiz content, be sure to check that out on the website soon. And related to our email program, since we launched our email program in April of 2019, we've had 29 deployments with a list that has grown to more than 50,000 subscribers. As a reminder, this is a list that we had to build from scratch when the DMO started. The Discover Puerto Rico email program is performing well above industry standards with an open rate of 32%, beating the industry standard of 10%. Also coming soon, we'll be doing a creative refresh to our email content. Here's a look at what those email blasts are going to look like moving forward. Templates are currently in development and we'll be sharing those soon. Our destination has also recently had a great presence at MPI World Congress, where our team conducted 40 appointments and sponsored a general session where we presented our new Meet in Full Color video. Over 1,700 attended this important event. We were also featured prominently on signage throughout the event and also on the mobile app. And when ASAE decided to have their event virtual in August, we utilized our strategic partnership to become one of the host cities for a live community pop-up event. We will be bringing 10 to 15 association executives for a FAM, and our event will be featured as a hybrid event in the main ASAE event. And because meeting planners are sharing that they continue to need our help to market their events to attendees, we've launched a marketing toolkit for planners featuring customizable videos, postcards, e-blasts, and social media templates for them to build attendance and create excitement for their upcoming Puerto Rico events. We've also recently updated our planning guides for meetings, leisure, and luxury. These sales tools provide the details our consumers need, our customers need, and they can also be found on our website. And finally, we've created a new MICE video playing off of our Work in Full Color concept titled Meet in Full Color. Using the theme of how color can inspire meetings on the island, this concept utilizes all of the great testimonials we've gathered over the past few months and helps us maximize sponsorship opportunities at upcoming events. Brad debuted this video June 17th on stage at MPI World Education Congress, and now we want to share it with you.
This destination is gorgeous and quite a place to visit. It feels like an international flight, but this is a domestic flight.
Puerto Rico is handling the health and safety guidelines here fabulously.
You know, it's a great destination for exploration, for creating an experience.
The hotels have all been redone. The facilities are also modern, but you have the beaches, you have a rainforest, you have great shopping, Old San Juan.
There is life here. There is activity here.
Being Puerto Rico after 10 years has been one of the best experiences I've had in a while.
Well, you've got access and facilities, no question about it. But Puerto Rico has incredible culture.
For planners who've not been to Puerto Rico, who are considering Puerto Rico, they're going to be pleasantly surprised with what they see.
We have 5 RFPs to Puerto Rico in 21, 22, and 23. Get on board, they are ready to rock.
It's one of the most exciting places, I think, to bring a meeting or a convention.
Awesome. And with that, I will turn it over to our fearless leader of sales, Ed Carey.
Only after a dramatic video, of course. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. And a special shout out. I see a number of our customer advisory board members are joining us this morning, and we really appreciate all you do for us. We thought we'd spend a few minutes today updating everyone on the live interactions that we're having with meeting planners and travel advisors, both on island and in the marketplace. As we discussed last month, we've been very busy with site inspections and fam trips all over the island. And in June, we hosted 3 fam trips, 10 site inspections, and 1 pre-planning tour that brought in over 40 meeting planners and travel advisors. And we've already scheduled an additional 14 site inspections and pre-planning trips in the months of July and August. On top of that, we're hosting our customer advisory board of 16 key corporate association and incentive buyers. That's in late July. And another 40 additional planners will be joining us for the land exchange event at the beginning of August. And finally, we're working with the American Society of Association Executives, ASAE, to host a live half-day session from our convention center as part of their annual meeting. So San Juan is one of only 10 cities across the US to participate as a live pop-up participant in this event. So needless to say, our destination services department is and has been extremely busy. But of course, we could not do all of this without the help of our hotel, the MC and venue partners. And for that, we want to both thank and congratulate you. All right, so we've been very strategic in our approach to showcase the entire island. And we've included the types of experiences that we know planners will be looking for in the post-COVID world. From great outdoor activities to salsa lessons in Ponce, the culture and the diversity of Puerto Rico is really true. And to quote one of the planners from our incentive fam, it was very well thought out. We had no idea Puerto Rico had so much to offer. And my client had never been there. And now we're requesting a contract. So that's what you want to hear after a fam. Now, we're also seeing that more and more planners are getting back on the road and attending industry trade shows and events, as I think some of our speakers alluded to earlier. According to the latest North Star Pulse survey, which we've been following since March of 2020, by the end of May, 60% of the respondents who have attended or plan to attend industry events in the coming months. This optimism was evident at events like Meeting Planner International's World Education Conference in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. Nearly 13 of those 1,700 planners and suppliers were live in attendance, and Brad had the opportunity to address the general session on the final day to introduce the testimonial video that you just saw. And surprisingly, many planners now believe that the new normal is going to look more like the old normal. They expect their meetings will likely look very similar to what they did pre-COVID in terms of attendance and overall number of meetings. And the virtual or the hybrid portion of their meetings are being looked at as a way to extend their reach, versus replacing the live engagement portion. The biggest concerns now have migrated towards service and contracting issues. Probably not a big surprise. Planners know that the industry is having issues with staffing, and it's being reflected in service levels. We wouldn't be surprised if planners begin to request service guarantee clauses in their agreements, which we know can be a bit difficult to establish. And beyond that, they seem to be having trouble finding the contacts that they were working with pre-COVID. And they're surprised at how high the rates are and how inflexible some have become with contract terms. So just saying we should keep this in mind as the rest of the world continues to open up and supply begins to catch up with demand. As Brad alluded to earlier, our lead volume continues to remain very strong compared to 2019. And actually in the last 12 weeks, 10 of those have exceeded 2019. And we expect this trend to continue as more organizations lift restrictions on travel and we get out on the road more often. Nearly 70% of these requested rooms fall within a 2-year booking window. And the demand through 2022 appears to be stronger than our competition. So where we see an opportunity is to target planners who are booking 3 years and out. And we've been working with our strategic partners like SimpleView and Strategic Database Research and others to identify these events before everyone else in the world does the same. And our pipeline of active opportunities, it continues to grow stronger as the recovery progresses. As of the end of June, the current active opportunities are now a full 15% higher than they were at our high point in 2019. And then lastly, we will have a presence at an additional 9 important live MICE trade shows between now and the end of August. And of course, we look forward to seeing many of you at upcoming events like IMEX. And we plan to introduce a series of in-market roadshows and events in the fall and winter months as the marketplace allows. And so with that, I will turn it over to Francisco Blanch for the leisure sales update.
Thank you, Egg, and good morning, everyone. As you can appreciate in the calendar, we have been highly active in June and are gearing up to a busy third quarter with more in-person events as restrictions ease up throughout the country and overseas. Evolving from virtual events, but still in use, we hosted several hotels at the New Age Lux Trade Show. We had a total of 115 appointments and 213 agents visits during the event, with great interaction among travel advisors and all the Puerto Rico exhibitors. We hosted a virtual sales mission on the Remo platform provided by GPS. We had hotels and DMCs participating, and it was sponsored by Iberia Airlines and Rondel Barrilito. We had multi-market participation with several European and Latin American countries, and the event geared to the wholesale segment had a total of 72 appointments. And for the mixology closing, we invited 50 additional travel advisors from various countries. We also had 2 webinars with American Airlines, which gathered over 70 agents. It was good to see how emphasis was made on our promotions, offering additional percentages of commission to travel agents, and combined our presence and ease of booking also on the VAX platform that we have mentioned several times in these updates. And as we transition to in-person events, we attended the ASTA South Florida's chapter event, attended by more than 100 travel advisors. Now we see booking trends continue strengthening, with June showing the highest results so far this year, and July shaping up to be a great month while booking windows remain short. And that is also reflective in our airline partners' conversations, matching the same trends. For the Puerto Rico Travel Expert Program, both graphs show the positive results from our efforts in educating the travel experts, with 2021 remarkably close to reaching totals for 2020 and exceeding 2019. Thank you for your attention this morning. And now I leave you with Xiomara Rodriguez, Communications Director for Discover Puerto Rico.
Thank you, Francisco. And thank you to our executive leadership team and our special guest, Adam Sachs, for such great information and insight. We have some questions on the Q&A box, but before we get started, I want to let you know that we will not be able to offer the translation feature during the Q&A session, so this portion will be in English only. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded, so you may replay it at your convenience or share it with colleagues who are not able to tune in today. In addition, my email is also on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me if after the webinar you have questions or need any additional information. I'll be happy to assist you. Lastly, I want to remind you that at the end of today's webinar, a survey will appear on your screen. We want to continue providing you with information on the topics that are most relevant to you. So please fill out the survey. We want to hear from you. A nuestros amigos que están utilizando nuestro servicio de traducción, no vamos a poder ofrecer la función de subtítulos en esta sección, así que la misma será solo en inglés. También, como mencioné antes, este seminario web está siendo grabado y más tarde esta semana les haremos llegar el enlace con la grabación para que puedan repasar el contenido a su conveniencia o compartirlo con algún colega que no haya podido estar presente el día de hoy. En pantalla están viendo mi correo electrónico. Pueden anotarlo y si al finalizar este seminario web tienen dudas, preguntas o necesitan alguna información adicional, pueden comunicarse conmigo a través del mismo. Por último, les recuerdo que al finalizar aparecerá una encuesta en su pantalla. La misma nos ayudará a continuar ofreciendo información relevante sobre temas de interés a nuestra industria. Por favor, participen de la encuesta. Queremos escuchar sus opiniones. Now, I have a few questions here. Adam, these questions are for you. I want to thank you for the comparison of Puerto Rico's forecast to the rest of the Caribbean. And I wanted to ask you, what does the forecast for the rest of the US look like? And are you seeing any other destinations coming back as quickly as Puerto Rico?
Thank you. The forecast for the rest of the US is much slower than for Puerto Rico. We are expecting for the US to still be well below 2019 levels in terms of the volume of trips this year. The leisure market in the US alone is going to still be about 9% below 2019 levels for this year, and the business travel market in the US still we expect to be roughly 30 to 35% below prior levels. So Puerto Rico is ahead of the US. It's experiencing a much stronger recovery. But there are places in the US that have recovered strongly already. So some of the Florida resort areas, certainly Miami and Tampa among them have done very, very well and coming back. San Diego is coming back strongly this year as well. And so Puerto Rico is in the same company as resort destinations that are recovering more briskly than certainly urban markets that are more dependent upon business travelers, and leisure travelers are tending to prefer outdoor destinations, and that has been to the advantage of Puerto Rico and other resort destinations in the U.S.
Thank you, Adam. Now, I have another question for you. I would really like to get your thoughts on the long-term recovery on in-person meetings versus remote.
Well, I thought that the North Star survey data that was just shared a few minutes ago was very interesting because it did indicate that meeting planners are starting to come around to the idea that the new normal is going to look more like the old normal than anyone thought. And one of the reasons that I am very slow to say things are going to be very different is because over the last 25 years that I've been analyzing the industry, there have been multiple times where it's been a popular thing to say that there's going to be a new normal. We saw this after the great financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Many people thought the meetings industry would be forever changed, that people had learned to do without meetings, that they were seen as an unnecessary expense, and that virtual meeting technology would take it over. Well, that did not happen. And I think that we're in a similar situation now where in the fog of war of, say, a year ago, it would have been very difficult to say, hey, things will get back to normal. Things just were so unusual for a long period of time. But we do see that there is a competitive advantage to meeting in person. In fact, during the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, we did research that showed that businesses that continued to invest in travel for their employees and continue to meet, they outperformed the rest of the industry for those businesses that cut back on travel. So what I think the net effect of virtual meetings would be, it will actually be to broaden the audience and participation in meetings, not to limit it. And so meeting planners and organizers will have the ability to offer hybrid meetings. And I think that there will be some, at least in the near term, effect where people will choose the hybrid or the virtual instead of it in person. But I think overall what it will do is increase the number of people that participate. And the in-person experience is so much better than the virtual experience. And so I don't think that we're going to see a mass migration to virtual. And the only reason that virtual meetings really work at all is because they're built on a foundation of in-person relationships. If you don't have the in-person relationship, there's no community and there's no gravity that brings people together, even in that virtual environment. So I don't think that the virtual environment it represents a significant threat to the industry. I think more it represents an opportunity.
Thank you, Adam. Well, that's all the time that we have, but thank you so much for joining us today. If you have not registered to our industry portal or to receive our weekly newsletter, please go ahead and sign up at discoverpuertorico.com/industry. If you need assistance with the sign-up process, please reach out to us and our digital team will assist you. I also want to remind you about our International Market Reentry webinar that will take place on July 28th at 10 a.m. That will be hosted by our Chief Marketing Officer, Leah Chandler, and joining her, special guest, Chris Thompson from Brand USA, Don Welsh from Destinations International, Fred Dixon from New York and Company, and Amanda Hills from Hills Balfour. Also, be on the lookout for the registration link to our next industry update, which will be August 18th at 10 a.m. The invitation will be hitting your inbox soon. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.